Good morning, everyone. It's really nice to see you here for the beginning of our conference. The weather, it works with us. It really matched to the first day of the conference. It's raining, so we can do anything more. And for the beginning, I would like to invite you to the first discussion of this morning. And this will be the discussion about museums, museums in mountainous regions, mission and future, from tradition to innovation, new museum dimensions, and new perspectives. The moderator of this discussion will be Dr. Giovanni Kesic from Trentino Ethnographic Museums Network that, after many troubles, arrived and here is with us. Our guests will be Donna Livingstone from the White Museum of the Canadian Rockies in Canada, that she is online with us. Hello, Donna. Here is also Michel Houvillère from Swiss Alpine Museum in Switzerland. Of course, Anna Wende-Surmiak from the Tatra Museum in Poland, and Julita Izabela Zaprucka from the Karkunovsky Mountain Museum, also in Poland.
Thanks, Emilia. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks to the organization. Thanks to Aldo Audisio for the invitation. I'm, of course, very glad to be here. It is not my first time in Poland, but I'm into Zakopane myself, so I very much like to conduct this interesting discussion. Now, we don't have much time because we should be done by 10 o'clock, so I will start before giving I will start with a keynote which I prepared as a slide, which is something that I like very much. It's a quotation from this Robert Hertz, who was a prominent student in sociology of Emile Durkheim, and he would have been certainly Durkheim's follower, but sadly he died very young in action during World War I. He almost casually, he witnessed a pilgrimage which is held yearly in the Italian Western Alps, and people reach this sanctuary very high up on the mountain at over 2,000 meters, and they converge from two different valleys, and he was very impressed by what he saw at Sambes in the middle of August, on the 10th of August, 1912. And he wrote a quotation, he wrote this passage, which I always found very inspiring, and I would like to make my own. So I propose it to you as an introduction to the discussion. The mountains are a wonderful greenhouse. He actually says in French, merveilleux conservatoire, provided, however, that the rising tide from the plain has not yet submerged it. The Italian Grampian Alps are in this respect a blessed land. They form a sort of reserve where the ibex, which has disappeared from the rest of the Alps, meets in vast herds, and where the rarest alpine plants abound. In the pastures surrounding the sanctuary of Sambes, the Edelweiss is as common as the daisy in our meadows. The sociologist is no less favored here than the zoologist or botanist. Just as in the Alps, primitive rocks sometimes emerge from the mass of more recent stratification they covered elsewhere. In the same way, we see the oldest civilization in Europe appearing in a few islets, and for a few moments, against the backdrop of the high valleys, ritual beliefs and gestures have been perpetuated for many millennia, not in the state of survival or superstition, but in the form of a true religion, which lives its own life and which appears in the light of day under a transparent Christian veil. The main interest of the cult of Sambes is without a doubt that he offers a fragmentary and somewhat overloaded, but still clear and very lively image of prehistoric religion. So he actually points at the fact that the mountains are an important reservoir of memories, and as if they were, in effect, a natural museum, mountains as museums. And this is, I think, an interesting start point for our discussion. And so I would like to ask my guests in turn, what are we to make of these mountain museums? What is their nature? What are their perspective? How are we supposed to carry on their activity in the future, in this time of great changes, technological and otherwise? Thank you. So we should start, whoever wants to start.
Raz. The Tatra Museum in Zakopane, speaking about a sanctuary, I think the Tatras are like a sanctuary for taking also in the account the history of the region of Zakopane, of exploring the Tatras. It's not only the sanctuary of nature, but also a sanctuary of culture, and very unusual place, I would say, in the world, because I don't know if I dare to say so, I don't know nearly any other place in the world where mountain nature and culture and history of Polish civilizations meet so much as in Zakopane. It's a phenomenon because in the 19th century Zakopane was just a remote, really remote and really poor tiny village situated somewhere at the foot of the Tatra mountains, and then slowly some people from the towns came here. First only a few people, researchers, were interested in especially in geology, and then they encouraged the others to come. And then more and more people came, not only for research, but also to look for respite from urban life. In the meantime, there was a famous doctor from Warsaw, Dr. Tytus Chałbiński, who came here, and he discovered that the mountain air was very good to treat the pulmonary diseases. So that was the development of Zakopane, and finally at the end of the 19th century the Zakopane became as we call sometimes the hub of the universe. And but before it happened, already in 1880s, the intellectuals from outside, which were amazed with the landscape, with local people culture, they started to ask themselves that in such a beautiful region there should be a place to recognize and to promote this beauty of the nature and of the culture. So the Tatra Museum is, I think, quite an unusual museum, because it was founded not by the administration, but by the lovers, the admirers of nature, of culture, of the landscape. The first goal of the museum was to collect a nature specimen, and the very first collection was a set of stuffed animals, both from a local forester and taxidermist, Antoni Kocian, and then it developed quite quickly, and as we started with an exhibition of stuffed animals in 2 chambers of a wooden house, now we are 12 historical listed buildings, and really a big network of museums, a big I would say enterprise, and a big cultural center. But the aim from the very beginning until now, I think, is the same. It's love of nature, it's love of culture, and the willing of collecting the most precious items, the willing to show them to the public, and the willing to also collaborate with local community, not only to collect their stories, the items, but also to encourage them to appreciate their heritage, and to really understand what exceptional place they live in. So this is the main point, and even if we have during the last 120 years, this is the period of existence of the museum, even if we have different museologist theories and some aims in the museology change, in fact, here we of course we follow all the new streams, but we rather stuck to our principles. Yes.
So, thank you very much. That was a very interesting presentation, and I would like to ask Ms. Livingstone from Canada, I believe, if she wants to partake. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? Okay, good. Oops. My name is Donna Livingstone. I'm the head of the White Museum of the Canadian Rockies in Banff National Park in Canada. We've been around for just over 60 years, and I came on about 3 years ago, right in the middle of COVID. So we've had some challenges. In the process of joining the White, we decided that we needed to come up with a new narrative for a capital campaign. We need to repair some of our old buildings, but we also wanted to respond to future generations and get people excited about what's happening. And we looked around and talked to people, visitors, and to some of our colleagues, and we came up with a narrative of connecting to nature. Now that seems kind of obvious, but I don't know if we've been doing it as well as we could have. We didn't realize, I think there's 4.3 million visitors who come to Banff National Park every year. And we found that they were coming because they wanted to connect to nature. And when we looked a little more widely, we found that nature is very hot right now. It's kind of a big deal. So we found that doctors are prescribing time in nature as kind of a healing experience, that visitors come here, but they want to have a different kind of experience. They want to understand it a bit differently. So we are focusing on exhibitions that will get people excited when they come in, but also give them new ways of looking at the world when they leave. So if they look at an exhibition of flowers that we've got on right now, or they look at landscape paintings of the mountains, we want them to go out and look at the mountains in a different way, and also to start feeling a sense of responsibility for that landscape as kind of a climate change issue. We're fortunate because everything we have at the White speaks to that connection to nature, from the very earliest indigenous visitors who came to this area to the travelers who are coming in for a quick weekend. So we have hiking poles, and we've got photographs, and we've got so many different stories that we can tell. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Um, We've got exhibitions on canoes, climate change. We've got book launches, public speaking tours, and interactive activities on the grounds themselves. It's not always a pretty story. It's not all about pretty landscapes. We've interviewed local people who have come to Banff, which is a tourist town, looking for work, and we found that they reported a lot of violent behavior that was going on behind the scenes. So in order to support those tourist visits to this beautiful landscape, there was a lot of harassment going on. There's very poor housing and accommodation for people coming from to work here. So those are things that we brought up, and they're being addressed now by the town. As I said, there's never been a more important time to connect to nature. We've got all those visitors coming. The G7 summit in Scotland last year identified a nature positive movement that recognized the importance of caring for the natural world. So we're very fortunate that we're able to take that narrative and partner with some of our local partners and take it forward through exhibitions and programs. Important to our story is the indigenous knowledge. We have there's about 5 or 7 different indigenous tribes who have moved through this area over centuries. It's a very beautiful place. There's some healing waters here where people have come for comfort and health. So there's a tradition there. It was interesting because I was speaking to some elders from the Stoney Nakoda and said, in Banff, there's 2 seasons. There's ski season and there's hiking season. And you're telling me there's a whole bunch of other seasons we need to pay attention to. So we're working with them to develop programs so that people will start looking around them and looking at the changes in the natural world that happen during those seasons. So that's going to be, and we're very excited about that. And we've had a very good response so far. When Park survey a few years ago about what people wanted in the national park, the most memorable thing for me, I mean, they talked about, wildlife balance and, better visitor experience, but they said something that I thought was interesting. It just said, be worthy of this place. We live in this incredible landscape with this. We're so privileged to be here. We need to be worthy of it and take responsibility for it. So that's kind of where we're going forward now, is to find out how we can be worthy of this place and encourage our visitors to take care in the landscape, to observe it, and to make some notice on that. I believe that artists, we do a lot of art exhibitions and we have a good art collection. I believe that artists are cultural and environmental first responders. They're the first on the scene. They see what's changing in society, they see what's changing in the environment, in the way we approach the world. So the work that they produce, isn't always pleasant. It's beautiful, it can be beautiful, it can be funny, it can be challenging, but it allows an invitation into the discussion around challenging issues like climate change and what traffic is doing into a national park. So we were founded by two artists, and that's the core of our collection. So we're really taking that message forward now and searching out ways that we can engage people with that noticing the landscape around them and that connection to nature. We did a series of tours last year around a nearby lake, and we had a curator of art and her husband, who is a geologist, and they walked around the lake and they were sold out. But people would say, I asked her about it. She said she was astonished about how many people came up afterwards and said, this was a healing thing for me. I've been going through a lot of things with COVID, or I've lost my job or whatever, but being in nature is a solution and a solace to people. So that's really what we're going to be doing going forward. And we're seeing the results of it already, and we feel very encouraged by it. So thank you. That's what I was going to say. Thank you for letting me be here too. This is wonderful. Okay, there we go.
Thank you very much. Well, we go through this first round of talks, and then we maybe have a little discussion. So whose turn is it? You? Okay. Please.
I brought 5 photographs to show you what the Swiss Alpine Museum is, or also what it was. The first picture is from 1905, and this shows what was the Swiss Alpine Museum and where we come from and what are our roots. The museum was founded by the section Bern from the Swiss Alpine Club, and there were academic men, upper and middle class men living in the city, and they had like a scientific interest in the Alps, and they also wanted to show how beautiful the Alps are, but also were interested in flora and fauna and geology and cartography and all these things they were interested in these times. This museum was at the bourgeois house in the old town of Bern. And then the museum changed somewhat over the next 100 years, but the biggest change we had was in 2012. Please, the next slide. 2012, the museum reopened with a new concept. This is a picture from the first exhibition under the new director, Beat Hechler. He laid down 1,200 objects on the floor of the museum and asked, who are we, what do we collect, and what do we want to be? And the exhibition itself gave part of an answer to this question. Different persons, people, guided through this exhibition and showed their relationship to the mountains. And that's what we want to be. We want to be a contemporary exhibition space that focuses on the relationship between human and mountains. And contemporary topics are very important for us. We don't want to show how the mountains are. We want to question it and discuss it with our audience. Can you please go to the next? This slide shows a bit the big transformation process we went through. It started 2012. On the right side, you can see what the Swiss Alpine Museum made before 2012: permanent exhibition, temporary exhibition, and events. And then we transformed to a cultural enterprise. We have 3 different exhibition formats, 3 different rooms for different exhibitions. We do a lot of events due to our setting in a city. We have a lot of events for the public. We also run a restaurant and a shop that creates its own products. We have an exhibition space at the Gotthard bus, and we also do network activities. So it's a quite busy and dynamic institution. The next 2 photos show a bit how we work. This picture is from this year. On the right side, you see our exhibition curator, Barbara Keller. She is working together with inhabitants of Mitholz. And this autumn, we will start a new temporary exhibition about Mitholz. It's a very interesting story. This village has to go through hard times because they found out that there are big ammunition reserves from the Second World War in bunkers around this village, and it's a high risk that it could be a super explosion. So the whole village has to leave. And instead of making an exhibition about Mitholz, we are doing an exhibition with Mitholz, and we are working together with some inhabitants there, and we question with them what means home, for example, or how do we deal with risk. We are collecting with them memories in their village and asking together with them what do we have to remember about Mitholz. And I thought about this project when I heard yesterday about museotherapy, because I think it's more or less this. And the last slide shows a picture from our exhibition 2018. The title was "The Wolf is Here," an exhibition about people. It's an example for what do we mean when we say we want to talk about contemporary topics. The wolf is a very emotional topic in Switzerland, and I can imagine that in your places it's also like this. The wolf re-immigrated to Switzerland in the 1990s, and we are still like struggling how do we deal with it. And it's a very polarized topic because to talk in cliches, we have on the one side urban, natural, loving people that think it's amazing that we have the wolf back here, and on the other side, people from mountainous regions which have to live with the wolf, and they are afraid and don't like this. And in this exhibition, we wanted to take like a neutral position and treat this topic very scientifically and very factual based. We showed different interviews from people with different perspectives to the wolf, and asked the public at the end to situate themselves in the range between wolf lovers and the other side. And yes, that means for us talk about contemporary topics.
Thank you very much. Now it's for the last of our panel, is Julita, and so from the Karkunovsky Museum in Jelenia. Okay.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation. It's a great pleasure for me to be here with you in Zakopane and to present short our museum. Museum Karkunovsky is located on the foot of Karkonosze Mountains, which are the highest range of Sudety. You can see on the first slide some countryside of our mountains with this highest peak, Śnieżka. They are not so very high like Tatra, but very, very beautiful. The next slide shows where the museum in Jelenia Góra is located. It is the southwest part of Poland, just in the corner and close to German and Czech border. And our region, our town, have a very complicated history because Karkonosze Mountains and this region belongs in the past, in the Middle Ages, to Germany, then to Czech, then Austria, then once again to Czech, and after 1945, after the Second World War, to Poland. So we don't have any such traditions like here in Zakopane, but we have very multicultural heritage and tradition. We don't have any regional cuisine, any regional costumes, and so on. But we are very rich on various traditions, and we try to connect it in work of our museum. Museum Karkonoske has also a long history. It's about 130 years and starts with founding at the beginning of 19th century by, it was of course in German times, 1880, by Karkonoski Society, in German Riesengebirgsverein, and the first main buildings, it is on the slide, next slide please. You can see the building from 1914. Then it was rebuilt, renovated in 1938, and for 10 years in Polish times, because we continue this tradition from 1945 as Polish Karkonosze Museum. It was rebuilt, and we have since 3 years also a glass manufactory, glass works, in order to carry off the old glass tradition of this region. The collection of museum, it's about 60,000 objects, various character, historical, archaeological, ethnographical, but we are very proud of the biggest glass collection, artistic glass, of course, in whole Poland, which belongs nearly 9,000 objects. Muzeum Karkonoskie is also has his localization also in other places like the town. We have some 3 branches. It's on the next slide to see. Our permanent exhibition and also temporary exhibitions are, of course, connected with Karkonosze, with our mountains. We have also a very big and very rich educational program for children, for young people, for seniors, and we organize a lot of competitions, photography competition for the mountains, Karkonosze in German, Riesengebirge, in English, Giant Mountains. It has also nearly 40 years tradition here. And the next slide, please. Yes, our branches are the military open air exposition, which is connected with the 70 years when the garrison of army and army college was located in Jelenia Góra, and we present heavy weapon of Polish army from 1943 to 1980s. About 20 minutes from Jelenia Góra in famous ski resort Szklarska Poręba is located another our branch, the house of Karl and Gerhard Hauptmann. It's a very beautiful, picturesque place, atmospheric writer's house, which thanks from Nobel Prize winner Gerhard Hauptmann and his brother Karl was a long time the head of the artistic colony in Szklarska Poręba in German times. It was the end of 19th and beginning of 20th century. And the German names, it was Schreiberhauer Künstlerkolonie. And then another branch of our museum is the next slide, is the castle in Bolków, which is also very unique and famous example of Gothic defense architecture in Poland, with a very characteristic element, 25 meters high tower with a beautiful view of our mountains, Karkunovsky. There are also a lot of educational programs, which there is a center of knightly culture. We try in every our educational and exhibition program to connect German, Polish, Austrian culture to continue this tradition, which is, I think, in contemporary times very, very important.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's been a very interesting roundabout, and well, one thing which I found interesting, we've had two examples from Poland, one from Canada, the Rocky Mountains, and one from Switzerland, is that despite the different location, it is really very much as if all we were working at the same object. The concerns are the same, the history of these museums are the same, the time span in which they develop, the original, etc. So it is like if in different places, everyone was actually doing the same thing and having the same set of concerns in the head. And this is, I think, interesting. I don't have a solution for this, because everyone thinks of being very original and very unique. And then, in effect, you know, if we put all of us around the table, we see that we're actually doing the same thing and speaking really the same language intellectually, even if, you know, one may be in Poland and another one on the Rocky Mountains. And that is really interesting. I think that should be a concern for thought. Another one is that, another interesting thing, I believe, is that I'm very suspicious of museums that are anxious of changing, you know, anxious, that have this anxiety for change, for renovation. Like, I'm sure that if we could all see the slide, if I had to take with me one slide of all the slides that we've seen, I would take the slide of the first setting of the Alpine Museum, you know, the Alpine Museum in Bern, you know, because you see the setting there was absolutely wonderful. You know, if you go back to that setting of 1905, you know, I think it was 1905. If you go back to that setting of, you really, you look at it in wonder, because all of those miniatures, all of those window cases, you know, it's all stuff that museums management, you know, over the course of the 20th century has done its best to sort of do away with. But I don't think that is necessarily a good thing, because museums, my contention is that museums are not for change. Museums are for exactly the opposite, you know, so they stand for something which is exactly the opposite as change. Everything changes in this world, everything. And museums should sort of a little bit eschew that, you know, shy away from that. But that is my personal, my personal perversion after some year of museum work. Now, if we have maybe 10 minutes, I would like everyone to ask everyone, like, if you had a dream, like, think, I have a dream, you know, if you had a dream about your museum, you know, if you had a dream to be accomplished in the next year, in the next 3 years, in the next 5 years, you know, if you had a, because museums really, in front of themselves, museums have many different perspectives, which can be attracting more public, do more conservation, doing research, doing field work. So if we could have one dream, one professional dream, let's call it, about your museum, what would it be in your particular, starting from your particular positions? So very short, you know, I would do a very short. I would take. I don't know if Donna Livingstone is still online. Maybe she is, maybe not. But I would like to ask everyone very shortly what their accessible dream would be for the near future in the museum profession. That's okay.
So two kinds of dreams. One, a very banal one. I'm sorry to tell it, but we are fighting to have more funds to develop the museums. I'm sorry for this banal, very banal dream. And the other dream, because in fact, in the Tatra Museum now we have public, we have exhibitions, everything is going quite well. But my dream is to involve local people more. It's quite difficult here in Zakopane and in the vicinity of Zakopane, because people have this attitude that they are here for tourists, and they consider the museum as one of the touristic attractions of the region. They start to understand that it is not only this that they could involve in our life, in culture more, but it's a really hard, very hard work. We do it, it goes quite slowly, I would say. So it's my big dream that local people understand what culture, what museums mean in their environment.
My dream is that we keep on changing because I think it's really important that museums change. I have the dream that our museum is a lively place that attracts people and also young people, that we are discussing, fighting, and also celebrating our culture, and yes, that the museum is a place that brings people together. That's our dream.
have talked about involving inhabitants, involving people in museum's life, and it is very, very important in Karkonosze with his specific character. So our aim is also regional education and education, 3 times education, because we didn't learn history of this region at school. In socialistic times, it was forbidden to speak about the German tradition here in Karkonosze Mountains. After 1989, it starts, and it is a process we try to continue in our exhibitions, in our educational projects, and our books we published. But when we speak about dreams, I think the epidemic times and war in Ukraine shows that we live in a very different world, and the future of all museums is more unpredictable as we expected. And we wish peace.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know if from Canada she's still on, she's still online. The Donna Livingstone, is she still online? Okay. Okay, so, well, thank you very much then. It's been, that's a good question. Can I tell you a bit later? No, well, no, actually, as a matter of fact, I have constructed my presentation in, which will be on at 11:30. I have constructed that around my dream. So if anybody's interested, they should come and listen to that. Okay. It's been a pleasure. It's been very, very interesting. And I really take with me the sense that everyone is working at the same object, everyone is working in the same field, and that should be thought of and inspected in thought, and it brings together many, many, many things that cut across our world in all directions. So thank you very much to our guests and for the beautiful presentations, and we continue with our works. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the inspiring discussion we have. Thank you, Giovanni, for conducting the discussion. We really appreciate that Donna could join us despite the middle of the night for her. Now we will go to the different, we will divide to the different auditoriums. So we are really sorry and we apologize because due to some unforeseen circumstances that we are facing since yesterday and the day before, we had to change a little to make some small changes within the internal program of each session, but the general schedule remains the same. So I would like now to ask the group of the Auditorium B to go down to join the presentation there, and the group from the Auditorium A remains here. And we all meet for the coffee break downstairs at 11 a.m.
Molto semplice.